Well, hello again. We are moving away from linear equations and talking about quadratic equations. This is lesson 2.4. So let's get started. We're first going to talk about the very basics of solving this type of equation, and that's when you have x squared by itself on the left and some other constant being squared on the right. If you square root both sides, then you will end up with two solutions. So one of them is going to be x equals k, and the other one is going to be x equals negative k, because no matter which one of those you square, you will get k squared. A negative times a negative is positive, and a positive times a positive is positive. So that's why that works. For example, if x squared is 64, then I know that x can be one of two things. X can either be 8 or x can be negative 8. Okay. Some more examples, just a little bit more complicated. If I have something like x plus 2 squared equals 25. Well, my first step is going to be the same as it was in the last examples. I'm going to square root the x plus 2 squared, and I'll get x plus 2. And then the 25, if I square root that, that's either going to be 5 or negative 5. Now, I'm not quite done solving because x is not by itself, so I have two equations. And to solve each one of those, I need to subtract 2 from both sides. So the first one will give me x equals 3. The second one will give me x equals negative 7. So those are my two solutions for that equation. All right, now if I have x minus 9 squared equaling 9, then again I square root both sides and I get that x minus 9 equals either 3 or negative 3. And again, one more step to solve these. I need to add 9 to both sides of both equations, and that gets me x equals 12 or x equals 6. All right, now, when you have two things that multiply together to equal 0, there's a null factor law, and that says that when two things multiply together to give 0, either the first thing equals 0 or the second thing equals 0. They can't both not equal 0. Okay, so one of them has to be 0. Okay, that's basically what that says. And this is how it's written in algebra. If you have a times b equaling 0, then either a is 0 or b is 0. For example, if I have x times x minus 5, and that equals 0, then I know that either the first thing, x, equals 0, or the second thing, x minus 5, equals 0. And I solve those equations. The first one's already solved, x equals 0, but there's a little more work being involved to solve the second equation, and that says that x equals 5. So those are my two solutions to that example. I can do some more of those. X plus 3 times x minus 12 equals 0. So that means that x plus 3 is 0 or x minus 12 is 0. And if I solve each of those separately, I get that x is negative 3 or x is 12. All right, and another example, 2x minus 1 times 3x minus 2 equaling 0. That means that either 2x minus 1 equals 0 or 3x minus 2 equals 0. Solve those a little bit further and I get that 2x is 1 or 3x is 2. And dividing will get me the final solutions, which is x equals a half or x equals 2/3. Either one of those will, you could plug either one of those into that equation and get an answer of 0. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about, actually the second to last, is solving using technology. So you have a calculator, Casio, and you can go to the solver function on the main menu. And so you have x squared plus 5x minus 6, and you want to know what x's I can plug into that so that the left side does equal 0, which is on the right side. Okay, so this is what your screen is going to look like on the Casio. You plug in 1 for a because that's your x squared coefficient. You plug in 5 for b because that's your x coefficient, and you plug in negative 6 for c because that's your constant. Okay, make sure that those are in the right order, otherwise you'll get bad answers. And then you solve it, and this is what your calculator gives you, 1 and negative 6. So x1 is 1, x2 is negative 6. Those are just the two possible x's that you could plug into that equation, and so that the left side would equal 0, which is on the right side. You could plug in x equals 1, you could plug in x equals negative 6, and both would work. Okay, so those are my two solutions. Now the last way is the quadratic formula, which we've all seen before. x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Some of you know a song that helps you remember that. But again, we have an equation like this, x squared plus 2x minus 3, and I want to know when is that equal to 0. So 1 will be plugged into a, 2 will be plugged into b, and negative 3 will be plugged into c. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like when I replace every a with 1, every b with 2, and every c with negative 3. And if I simplify that a little bit further, the 2 squared becomes a 4, the 1 times negative 3 becomes a negative 3, simplifying it even further, and the negative 4 and the negative 3 under the square root become a positive 12. One step further, simplifying the square root, and the 4 plus 12 becomes a 16. 16 is something that I do know the square root of, so x is going to equal negative 2 plus or minus 4 all over 2. And I can divide every single term by the 2 on the bottom, so I get x is negative 1 plus or minus 2. So x is either 1 or x is negative 3. So many different ways to solve quadratic equations. If you have questions, please let me know, and I will see you tomorrow.